everyone, blessings. I hope that you're all doing well. In this video, I will be discussing how to discover God's will for your life. But before we get to our topic of discussion, subscribe to this channel. Also share this video, like this video, especially if you enjoy what I'm doing over here on this channel. And as usual, I do appreciate all of your support. Now let's get into our topic of discussion, how to discover God's will and plan for your life. In life, we do have a lot of very important decisions that we have to make on a daily basis. And it's very important as we go through this process and as we go through the decision making in our lives, that we know that we're making the right decisions, especially when it comes to the very, very important things that could have a very long and lasting impact on our lives. And it's very important that we know God's plan and his purpose for our lives, because God's plan and God's will for us is the best plan possible. And we want to make sure that we're making the right decisions, the correct decisions, and the decisions that will benefit us the most in life. So in order to do that, it's important that we make sure that we are connected to God, that we can hear his voice, that we can get his guidance, especially when it comes to decision making and knowing his will and his plan for our lives, because his will and his plan is the perfect one for us. Now, there are some indicators and some clues that will let us know that we are on the right path, right? So that's really the purpose of this video. What are the clues? What are the indicators to let us know that we are in the will and the plan of God? Because I know if you're watching this video right now, you probably want to know, what is God's purpose for me? What is his plan? What is his will? I need to know. I want to know. So in this video, I'm going to share with you a couple of things, a few things that are very good indicators that you are on the right track and that you are on the right path. So clue number one, and here's how you know. Number one, firstly, is that when you are in the will of God and when you're on the right path, you're going to have peace. The peace of God is going to be with you in that decision and whatever you decide to do, right? The peace of God is going to be with you in that relationship, right? The peace of God is going to be with you in that situation. So God's peace and having peace about a situation and peace about a thing is a good sign that you are probably on the right track. Now, I kind of want to give a caveat to this, because sometimes when we are following God and when we think we're hearing from God and we feel like we're being led and guided by God, sometimes we end up in situations that are not very favorable or comfortable. And we may end up in a situation that looks very bad and feels bad and doesn't feel like we're kind of on the right track. We may run into a situation where there is trouble, where there is a crisis, and that sometimes may make us want to stop and kind of run for cover and do the opposite of where we're being gravitated to. So watch out for that. I mean, case in point, we can look in the book of Genesis at the story of Joseph. Joseph was one of the younger sons of Jacob. He was a favorite child and he was spoiled, and his brothers were very jealous of him and they wanted to kill him, and they ultimately decided against that, and they decided to sell him into slavery. So poor Joseph, he ends up in slavery and in captivity and is led into Egypt, and he's in his foreign land away from his family. And then he ends up in a situation where he's wrongfully accused of a crime that he did not commit, and he ends up in prison. But ultimately, he went through all of those hardships and trouble because God had to bring him to Egypt in order for him to be put in a position to not only save his family and the people that betrayed him and his people, but also save his captors and the Egyptians, right? So sometimes we might be put in a situation that may seem a little crazy, that might seem out of order, that might seem like we're running into the fire, but actually that's still the Lord leading us, because we have to be strengthened along the journey, right? We have to be improved, right, while we're on the journey. So sometimes God will lead us into situations that don't make sense. Sometimes God will lead us into situations that are questionable, right? So I had my own testimony about this. So it was 2008, and I was a recent graduate, and I had just gotten out of school. And, the logical thing for me to do based on what I had studied was to go into ministry. And that was the plan for me, to go into some sort of full-time ministry. And I had a dream of doing missions work and perhaps going to Africa for a little bit after graduation. And that just seemed like the thing to do. And because that was my plan, and I didn't really pray to God for that, because it made sense, because I'm like, okay, God, I want to serve people and work for you. So why would you say no to that? And every time I tried to move in that direction, God shut every single door. And I'm like, what is going on here? So sometimes we might be planning to do something that's actually good, but that might not be the will and the plan and the purpose that God has for us, right? So I was in that situation. I'm like, okay, God, these doors are closing, so that's telling me that you don't want me to go into the missions field. You don't want me to go into full-time ministry. What in the world do you want me to do? Because that's what I studied in school, right? And then I was in a situation where I'm like, okay, I do have some student loan repayment that I have to start paying back, my student loans. I need a job to support myself. So what are we going to do here, God? So an opportunity opened up for me, and I interviewed for a position, I got it, and I felt a peace about it. And this was in a completely unrelated field. And I was a little annoyed, because I'm like, okay, God, if you wanted me to go into this field, why didn't you just lead me to study that particular field? And nothing made sense to me at the time, right? So I got the job, and although it was in a completely different direction from where I thought I should be, but I still felt God's peace in that I should be there. Lo and behold, it's 2008, and mind you, a few months in, the financial collapse and the financial crisis of 2008 happens. And unfortunately, the company that I was with was a casualty, right? So I was about to lose my job, and I'm like, okay, God, you lead me here, and now this terrible thing happens in the world and in the U.S. economy, and I'm about to lose my job. This does not make sense. Why did you lead me here? And God was like, I could listen to the Holy Spirit and hear him say, be still, know that I'm God, and stay exactly where you are. So I'm like, okay, God, very soon I'm not going to have a job. And then also, in addition to those student loans that I had that was about to kick in, the repayment part, I had some other debt that I had prayed about earlier. And I said, God, this is the exact amount that I need to get rid of this debt. And I need you to help me to come up with the money so I can pay this debt off. And I had prayed that prayer too. And had that in the back of my mind as well. So I was like, I have this other debt, and then I have the student loan debt. Right now I'm going to be out of a job. I don't know how I'm going to support myself. God, what should I do? I'm about to lose my job. And God just said, just be still and chill. So I'm sitting in the office, and I'm watching people panic. People are crying. People are scared. They're stressed out. People are angry. I'm looking around the office, and I'm seeing on every screen resumes, and people are just hitting the pavement trying to look for another job. And I was just so, I was just so like, I want to do the same thing, because I felt like, okay, like this urgency, like I should be also feeling like them, but I wasn't. I felt this peace because I was in the will and I was in the plan of God. So even in a crisis, God will keep you. So eventually I continued not to, and God told me, do not update your resume, do not network, do not write a cover letter. Stay right where you are. And it just didn't make any sense. I was like, pretty soon I will not have a job. And eventually I sat there long enough. Well, not that long. My pink slip came, and they told me your services and your job will be eliminated at this date. And the date was coming up very soon. And I'm like, okay, God, here's the sign. I no longer have a job. And God was like, yes, okay, that's fine. But what that got to do with what I told you to do? Be still, know that I'm God, and stay right where you are. So I listened. It didn't make sense. I should have been out there hitting the pavement and looking for a job and panicking like everyone else. But I still had this peace, although I was in a crisis. I was watching I watched hundreds of people lose their jobs. People this close to retirement, so close to retirement, lose all of their retirement savings. People, houses going into foreclosure. Just terrible. And God was just like, be still. That has nothing to do with what I told you to do, right? So I listened, and lo and behold, right before my final day, the job came to me. A person came to me while I was sitting where I was in the office that I was in and offered me an opportunity, another job. Another job in a climate where people were losing their jobs and people were having a hard time finding a job. And a job came to me and I knew it was God. And that's why God told me to be still and to literally and physically stay where I was. I'm so glad that I listened, because throughout the entire financial crisis, I worked, I had a job, I was able to pay my bills, I was able to pay off my student loans, start paying that off. And then remember that debt that I told you about earlier that I asked God for before all of that happened, for him to help me to pay it off? Well, when the other company that I was with collapsed, I ended up getting a severance. And guess how much that severance was? It was the exact amount that I needed to pay off that debt that I asked God to pay off. So God will sometimes use a crisis to bless us, but we have to be obedient. So the key principle here is, regardless of how bad things look, make sure that that peace of God, the peace that surpasses all understanding, the peace of God is with you. I had that peace the entire time, and that's how I knew. And that's why I did not panic like others panic. Yes, I was definitely concerned, and that is normal. But I didn't panic. I didn't have that fear inside of me because I felt the presence of God and I felt God with me. So how you know you're in the will of God is that he will give you peace regardless of the circumstance. So if the peace of God is with you, you are probably on the right path and on the right track. So don't look at circumstance. That can be deceiving. Monitor the level of peace. So that's number one. And even in relationships, if you don't have peace with that person, it's probably not the person for you. So make sure the peace of God is with you. Secondly, so that's the first thing. A second indicator is that you know that you're probably in the will of God is that whatever situation that you're involved with, or person that you're dealing with, or people that you're dealing with, that as you are dealing with them and as you are in the situation, it's propelling you and it's compelling you to move closer to God. So if you are dating someone, for example, or you're in a relationship, if you are not moving closer to God, if you are not growing spiritually, if you're in a situation career-wise or, just in life, and whatever the situation is or whatever you're involved with, it's pulling you away from God, and you start feeling a distance from God, or you're with a person and it's pulling you away from God, and you start not only that, but you stop feeling like yourself, and you're feeling even a distance from yourself and who you are as a person. That is a clear and a very good indicator that you are not on the right path and you're not in the will of God. Because when we are in the will and the plan and purpose of God, whatever we are involved with or in is going to move us closer to him, right? So that relationship that you're in, that marriage that you're in, that boyfriend, that girlfriend, whoever that is, that friend that you're with, these are people who are going to help you to grow as a person. And these people are going to help you to develop. These people are going to encourage you. These people are going to not pull you away from God, but pull you closer to God. And that's how you know these are the right people to have in your life. Whatever career or situation that you're in, it's going to be moving you closer to God, right? It's going to be pulling you closer to him, whatever the situation is that you are in, right? So whether it be situational, whether it be relational, whatever it is, and whatever you're involved with, these things need to be pulling you closer to God. And that's how you know you're in the will of God. But if they are taking you away from him and you're feeling even detached from yourself, that is a clear indication to me that that's probably not the path that you should be on, because we're supposed to be ideally in a state of constant growth, right? And going from glory to glory in God and growing in Him, right? So God is not going to want to put us in a situation where we're not growing as human beings and as individuals, that we're not growing in Him and that we're not getting to know Him better each and every day. That's not God's will, right? So that's another indicator. And finally, this is something I want to leave you with when it comes to discovering God's will. I want you to know and realize that you don't have to go outside of yourself to find God's will and His plan and His purpose for your life. We are complete. When God created you and I, He made us a complete person, complete in our purpose. Now, as we live our lives and as we move through our life on this earth, our purpose and our plan and His plan for us is unfolding each and every day. But the assignment is already there inside of us, right? His plan and his purpose is already inside of us. We don't have to go outside of ourselves to find who we are. So the closer that we move to God and the more that we connect to Him, the Holy Spirit and God's Spirit will begin to reveal His purpose to us each and every day. We're not going to get the full picture all at once. We'll get some things at a time. And sometimes God may even give us some visions, but it's a thing that's constantly unfolding, but it's already inside of us. So that is the good news for us. God's purpose for your life, His plan and His will is already inside of you. So you don't have to fret or be anxious about anything. What God has for you is already there, right? So it's up to us to discover it, to discover these things that are inside of us, already there, and to move in a direction where we can cultivate it and grow in it, right? To grow in our gifts, to grow in our talents and the things that we have to offer the world. But that's the blessing of it. It's already there. So we don't have to go to some distant place and land and to meditate for 1,000 days and to go through all these rituals to find out what it is that we need to do. Is already there. And if you pray and you ask God to reveal these things to you, He absolutely, positively will, because God wants what's best for your life. And He wants you to be happy, and He wants you to be blessed. And He wants you to know His will for your life, because it is the best plan and the best thing. And He wants to help you make the right decisions in life. He doesn't want us to be failing and faltering and to be suffering needlessly on earth. I mean, we're going to go through some things regardless, but we don't have to suffer unnecessarily. And that's sometimes this is what I believe, how many people are moving through life right now on earth, right? Many people are suffering because they don't know God's plan and they don't know His will for their lives, and they're just going through the motions. They don't, just moving aimlessly through life. They're lost. They haven't found their purpose, and they end up getting into things that they shouldn't, and doing destructive things. And this is why we're seeing people just so angry and doing so many horrible things on the planet, is because they're lost and they don't know. But if they knew God's will and His purpose and felt Him on the inside, they wouldn't be into those things. So it's very important for us and for our own stability and for our own soundness of mind to know God's will, because there is protection in God's will. There is strength in God's will. There is love in God's will. There is peace in God's will. And I hope and I pray that you experience all these things. Well, that is all that I wanted to share with you in this video. Take care. God bless. Stay in God's will and plan. Until then, I'll see you in the next video.